You selfish, heartless bitch. How dare you refuse us when we need help? Those words rang in my ears as scalding coffee dripped down my face at 6 in the morning. My own daughter Sarah had just thrown an entire mug of coffee at me, the ceramic shattering against the kitchen wall behind me. My silk blouse, the one I had bought just the day before, was completely ruined. But that was the least of my problems right then. I stood there, coffee burning my skin, while my daughter screamed at me like I was her worst enemy. And why? Because I had refused to hand over my credit card to her husband Marcus. Again. But the third time that month. After everything we did for you. Sarah's voice shook with rage. We let you be part of our lives. We invited you to holidays, and you couldn't even help when we desperately needed it. Marcus stood right behind her with this disgusting smirk on his face, like he was getting off on watching my own child destroy me. He wasn't even trying to calm her down. He was enjoying this show. But here's what they didn't know. What they could never have imagined in their wildest nightmares. I had been planning this exact moment for months. Every insult, every demand, every time they had treated me like their personal bank account. I had been waiting for them to go too far. You see, I wasn't just some pushover mother anymore. I wasn't the broke janitor who had scraped together pennies to raise Sarah. I was worth $8 million. $8 million. And as coffee dripped from my chin onto my kitchen floor, as my daughter called me worthless one more time, that day was the day I was going to destroy their lives forever. Sarah had no idea that in the next 2 minutes her world was about to collapse. Marcus didn't know that his free ride had just ended with the worst mistake of his life. If you want to see how $8 million and one recording could obliterate a family in minutes, hit that subscribe button right now. Tell me in the comments, what would you do if your own child threw coffee in your face? Because what I did next will leave you speechless. Let me tell you how we had gotten to this moment. Because Sarah screaming at me like I was her enemy hadn't always been our story. My name is Emily Joshua. 28 years ago, I was working the night shift as a janitor at General Hospital. I was making minimum wage, barely scraping by, but I needed that job. It was 3 in the morning when I heard a cry coming from the women's bathroom on the 2nd floor. Not normal crying, a desperate, newborn cry. I pushed open the bathroom door and found a baby girl lying on the cold tile floor. She was blue, barely breathing, with the umbilical cord still attached. Someone had given birth right there and just left her. Left her to die. I should have called security immediately. That had been protocol, but I couldn't leave her there. I couldn't walk away from this tiny human being who was fighting for every breath. So I wrapped her in my cleaning towels, called 911, and rode with her in the ambulance. The doctors said if I had found her even 10 minutes later, she would have died. 10 minutes. That was how close Sarah had come to never existing. Nobody came forward to claim her. No family, no mother, nobody. She was going into the system, bouncing from foster home to foster home, and I couldn't let that happen. Not to the baby I had saved, so I applied to adopt her. Me, a single janitor with barely enough money to feed myself. My husband David thought I was insane. We can't afford a child, he had said. She's not even ours. But I didn't care. She had been mine the moment I found her on that bathroom floor. The adoption took 2 years to finalize. 2 years of home visits, background checks, proving I could provide for her. When David found out Sarah wasn't his biological child like that mattered, he left us. Just packed his bags one night and said he hadn't signed up to raise someone else's mistake. So there I was, a single mother with a 2-year-old and one minimum wage job. But I wasn't going to let Sarah suffer because of my circumstances. I got a second job as a weekend waitress at Denny's. Then a third job cleaning houses on my days off. I was working 7 days a week, sometimes 18 hours a day, just to keep us afloat. But Sarah deserved more than just survival. When she was 5 and saw other kids in dance class, I signed her up even though it meant I would eat ramen noodles for a month. When she showed interest in piano, I bought her lessons even though I had to work overtime every week to afford them. I never took a vacation. Never bought myself new clothes. Never went out with friends. Every penny I earned went to giving Sarah the life she deserved. Sarah had been my entire world. My golden girl. Honor roll every semester from kindergarten through high school. Student council president, debate team captain, volunteer at the animal shelter every weekend. When she graduated as valedictorian, I cried harder than she did. Princeton University, with a full academic scholarship. My daughter, the girl I had found dying on a bathroom floor, was going to one of the best schools in the country. I had been so proud I could barely contain myself. I worked double shifts for months just to afford her dorm bedding and a decent laptop. When she called me during her first week crying because she was homesick, I drove 4 hours just to bring her favorite cookies and hold her while she cried. "You're the best mom in the world," she had told me that night. "I don't know what I would do without you." I believed her. God help me, I believed every word. But then she met Marcus during her sophomore year. Marcus Chen, this charming business major whose family owned a chain of restaurants. Old money, country club memberships, the kind of wealth I had never even dreamed of. And suddenly, everything changed. The first sign was when she stopped inviting me to campus events. "It's not really a family thing, Mom," she would say. But I would see photos on her social media of other students with their parents at the exact same events. Then she started making comments about my clothes. "Mom, maybe you should try shopping somewhere other than Walmart," she had said during one visit. I had been wearing my best dress. The one I had bought from a thrift store for her high school graduation. My little apartment became embarrassing. The fact that I still worked as a janitor became her shameful secret. When Marcus came home with her for Christmas junior year, she made me promise not to mention my jobs. "Just say you're between careers," she had whispered before he arrived. I should have stood up for myself then. But I wanted her to be happy. And Marcus made her happy. He was handsome, well-dressed, and polite to my face. He called me ma'am and complimented my cooking. I thought he was good for her. I had no idea what Sarah was telling him about me, about us. It wasn't until years later that I found out the truth. Sarah had been lying to everyone at Princeton about who I was. She had told her friends I was just the nanny who had raised her after her real parents died in a tragic car accident. She had said her biological parents were doctors who had left her a trust fund, but it was tied up in legal issues. She had created an entire fantasy life where I didn't exist as her mother, where the woman who had saved her life, who had sacrificed everything for her, who had worked 3 jobs to put her through school, was just hired help. Marcus and Sarah had gotten married right after graduation in this beautiful ceremony that had cost more than I made in 2 years. Of course, they had expected me to contribute. It was tradition for the bride's family to pay, Sarah had said. Like I had had tens of thousands of dollars just sitting around. I had emptied my savings account to help pay for their dream wedding. $23,000. Money I had been putting away for my own retirement, dollar by dollar, for 15 years. But seeing Sarah in that white dress, seeing her happy, I had thought it was worth it. That should have been my first warning about what was coming. 6 months after the wedding, they had come to me with their first demand. Not a request, a demand. They had needed a down payment for a house in this upscale neighborhood where Marcus's college friends lived. "We found the perfect place," Sarah had said. "We just needed $50,000. $50,000. Like I had been some kind of millionaire hiding money under my mattress. "I don't have that kind of money," I had told them. That was when Marcus had spoken up for the first time. "Come on, Mom," he had said, and the way he had said Mom had felt like acid in my mouth. "You've been working for decades. You must have had savings." I had savings. My retirement fund. The money I had been desperately trying to build so I wouldn't have to work until I died. But the way they had looked at me, like I was being selfish for hesitating, like I had owed them this money, I had given them the $50,000. Every penny of my retirement savings. And you know what Marcus had said when I handed him the check? Thanks, this should cover it. No hug, no tears of gratitude, no acknowledgement of what I had just sacrificed, just, this should cover it. But it hadn't been enough. It was never enough with people like them. 3 months later, they were back. Car payments were too high. Could I help with $1,000 a month? Just temporarily, Sarah had promised, until Marcus's business took off. I had taken out a second mortgage on my house. My little house that I had worked 20 years to pay off. Suddenly I had a monthly payment again. Also, my daughter and her husband could drive luxury cars. Then it was credit card bills. Then it was Marcus's student loans. Then there were their grocery bills because money was tight right then. Every month there was something new. And Marcus had stopped even pretending to be grateful. He had texted me his Venmo handle like I was some kind of subscription service. I had been working 7 days a week again, just like when Sarah was little. But this time, instead of piano lessons, I had been funding their entire lifestyle. I had been 62 years old. My back had been killing me, and I had been supporting 2 healthy adults who had treated me like garbage. When I had told Sarah I was exhausted, you know what she said? "You're being dramatic, Mom. Besides, you're lucky we even let you be part of our lives." Lucky? I had been lucky that they had let me fund their entire existence. If you can't believe how entitled some people can get, hit that subscribe button because this story is about to get so much worse. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had someone take your kindness for weakness? What Sarah and Marcus hadn't known, what they could never have imagined, was that someone had been watching our entire relationship unfold. Someone who had seen exactly who they really were. Mrs. Eleanor Whitman had been 93 years old when I had started caring for her on weekends 15 years ago. She had lived in this massive estate on the hill overlooking the lake, and her family had hired me through an agency to help with housekeeping and companionship. At first, it had been just another job. I had needed the extra money, she had needed someone reliable, and we had both kept our distance. But Eleanor had been different from anyone I had ever met. She had been sharp as a tack, funny, and she had actually listened when I talked. During those long weekend afternoons, while I had cleaned her house and helped her with errands, we had talked. About everything. About Sarah's achievements in school, about how proud I was, about my struggles to make ends meet. Eleanor would make tea, and we would sit in her beautiful sunroom, and for a few hours I had felt like I had a friend instead of just another employer. She had never made me feel small for being a janitor. Had never looked down on me for shopping at thrift stores or driving a 15-year-old car. When I would show up exhausted from working 3 jobs, she would insist I sit down and rest before starting any housework. "You work too hard, dear," she would say. "That daughter of yours is lucky to have such a devoted mother." As the years had gone on, Eleanor had become the closest thing to family I had had besides Sarah. She had celebrated when Sarah had gotten into Princeton. She had listened when I had cried about David leaving us. She had been there through every triumph and heartbreak, and she had never judged me for the sacrifices I had made. But Eleanor had also been watching everything else. She had seen how Sarah had started treating me when she had come home from college. She had witnessed the way Marcus had looked at me, like I was something stuck to the bottom of his shoe. She had heard the phone calls where Sarah would demand money and hang up without even asking how I was doing. "That girl doesn't deserve you," Eleanor had told me after one particularly brutal visit where Sarah had criticized everything from my apartment to my cooking. "And that husband of hers is worse. She's my daughter," I would say. "This is just a phase." Eleanor would shake her head. "A phase that's lasted 3 years? Honey, this is who she is." Eleanor had never married, had never had children. Her nephew would visit maybe twice a year, usually asking about her will. The rest of her family had written her off as a rich old lady they would inherit from eventually. But I had been there every weekend for 15 years. Through her hip surgery, through her pneumonia, through the loneliness. When she had passed away the year before, I had been heartbroken. The reading of her will was 3 weeks later. I had figured maybe she had left me a small keepsake. I never expected what had actually happened. Eleanor had left me everything. $8 million. But I hadn't told Sarah and Marcus about the inheritance. I had wanted to see who they really were when they thought I had nothing left to give them. That morning was supposed to have been completely different. I had the inheritance papers in my purse, along with a cashier's check for $200,000. I was going to surprise Sarah and Marcus with the news that their money problems were over forever. I was going to help them buy that dream house they had been talking about. Maybe even start college funds for the grandchildren I had hoped they would give me someday. I woke up at 5 a.m., too excited to sleep. I had made their favorite breakfast, blueberry pancakes from scratch, the kind Sarah used to beg me to make when she was little. I had set the table with my best dishes, the ones I had been saving for special occasions. I even bought fresh flowers for the centerpiece. I thought we were going to have this beautiful family moment. I imagined Sarah crying happy tears, maybe finally understanding how much I loved her. I had pictured Marcus actually hugging me for the first time, calling me Mom and meaning it, but when they walked into my kitchen at 6 a.m., they hadn't been there for breakfast or family time. Marcus had gone straight to the point. "We need your credit card," he had said. Not even saying good morning. "I'm investing in this cryptocurrency opportunity, but it's time sensitive. I need to transfer $50,000 today." $50,000 for cryptocurrency, some scheme his college buddy had pitched him over drinks. I hesitated. Not because I didn't have the money, I had $8 million sitting in my accounts, but because something about the way he had demanded it, the way he had assumed I would just hand it over for some risky investment, had made me pause. "What kind of cryptocurrency?" I had asked. "Have you researched this? Do you understand the risks?" That was when Marcus's mask had come off completely. "Are you serious right now? You're gonna lecture me about business? You're a janitor." Sarah had jumped right in to support her husband. "Mom, this is a real opportunity. Marcus knows what he's doing. Stop being so paranoid and just help us." But I kept asking questions. What company was this? Who else was investing? Had they talked to a financial advisor? Basic questions that any reasonable person would ask before handing over $50,000. That was when Sarah had exploded. "You're so selfish. After everything we've done for you, we let you live near us, we invite you to holidays, we include you in our lives, and you can't even help when we desperately need it. Let me live near them." Like I had been in some charity case they had been doing a favor by tolerating. "We've been carrying you for years," Sarah had continued, her voice getting more vicious. "You think we enjoy having to ask you for money? You think we like dealing with your guilt trips and your questions? We're trying to build a future here, and you're too cheap to invest in your own family." I stood there looking at these two people I sacrificed everything for, and I realized they genuinely believed I owed them this money. "I just want to understand the investment," I said quietly. That was when Sarah had grabbed her coffee mug like a weapon and threw it at me. I calmly wiped the coffee from my face and pulled out my phone. Sarah was screaming, Marcus was smirking, and they had no idea their entire world was about to collapse. "You want to know what I think about your business venture?" I said quietly. "Let me show you." I held up my phone and played a recording of one of their hidden conversations about me. Their own voices filled the kitchen. Sarah calling me selfish and heartless, Marcus calling me an old woman, Sarah saying they had let me be part of their lives out of charity. Every cruel word, every sneer, every second of their disgusting performance, all captured in crystal clear audio and video. Sarah's face had gone from rage to confusion to pure terror in about 3 seconds. "Mom, why do you have hidden cameras?" I said calmly. "I've been recording our conversations for months. Every demand, every insult, every time you treated me like garbage, it's all here. Marcus tried to grab my phone. You can't record people without permission. That's illegal. Actually, it's not. This is my house, and I have every right to record what happens in my own kitchen, but that's not even the best part. I reached into my purse and pulled out a thick manila envelope. Sarah's eyes went wide when she saw the letterhead. Whitman and Associates, Eleanor's law firm. Do you know what this is? I asked, pulling out the inheritance documents. This is Mrs. Eleanor Whitman's will, the woman I cared for every weekend for 15 years, while you two were busy spending my retirement money. I spread the papers across my coffee-stained kitchen table. Eleanor left me everything. Her house, her investments, her entire estate. Want to guess how much that is? Sarah's voice had been barely a whisper. How much? $8 million. The silence in that kitchen had been deafening. Sarah grabbed the edge of the counter like she was going to fall over. Marcus's mouth had been hanging open like a fish. 8 million? Sarah stammered. You're rich? I've been rich for over a year, I said. While you were calling me cheap and selfish, while you were making me take out a second mortgage to fund your lifestyle, while you were treating me like your personal ATM, I was worth $8 million. Marcus suddenly found his voice, and it had been completely different from 5 minutes before. Mom, this is incredible. Why didn't you tell us? We could have been celebrating. Mom. Now I am a mom again, now that he knew about the money. You want to know why I didn't tell you? I looked at this woman who I had found dying on a bathroom floor 28 years ago. I found you in a hospital bathroom. You were dying. I chose you over my marriage when David left. I chose you over everything, every single day for 28 years. Sarah had been crying then, real tears, reaching for me. Mom, please, I'm sorry. I didn't mean those things. You're not my daughter anymore, I said, and my voice was steady as steel. And you'll never see a penny of this money, ever. The video had gone viral within 6 hours. I didn't post it myself, I wasn't that petty. But Marcus's sister Emma had been one of my Facebook friends, and when she saw the coffee-stained photo I had posted with the caption, "Family is supposed to love you," she started asking questions. So I had sent her the video. Emma had been horrified. She had immediately shared it with her parents, Marcus's parents, who I had met exactly twice in 5 years. They were wealthy, respected people in their community, very concerned about their family's reputation, and Ntedbe. They did not appreciate finding out their son had been financially abusing an elderly woman. Emma had also shared it with her friends. And those friends had shared it with their friends. By noon, the video of my own daughter throwing scalding coffee in my face, while screaming about how worthless I was, had been viewed 50,000 times. The comments had been brutal. What kind of monster treats their mother like this? This is elder abuse. Someone needs to check on this poor woman. These people are disgusting. But the real damage had come when people had started recognizing Sarah and Marcus. Sarah was working at a prestigious marketing firm downtown. Marcus started at an investment company. Both of their employers had seen the video. Sarah was fired by 3 p.m. Apparently, her boss had said they couldn't have someone with such poor character and judgment representing their company. Marcus had lasted until the next morning before his firm had decided to go in a different direction. Marcus's parents called him that evening. I knew because Emma had told me later. They had seen the video, they had heard the audio, and they had been absolutely mortified. These had been people who donated to elderly care charities, who prided themselves on raising good children. We didn't raise you to abuse old women, his father had apparently said. You're no longer welcome in this family until you make this right. His mother had been even harsher. That woman sacrificed everything for her daughter, and this is how you repay her? You're disgusting. Marcus's family had cut him off completely. No more trust fund payments. No more family gatherings. No more business connections. The golden boy who had married my daughter for her supposed inheritance had suddenly been persona non grata in his own family. Sarah had tried to do damage control. She posted this tearful video on Instagram, claiming the coffee throwing had been just a misunderstanding and that we had worked everything out. She talked about how much she loved me, how grateful she was for everything I had done. The comments on that video had been even worse than the original. Too little, too late. You showed your true colors. Your poor mother deserves better. The inheritance story had come out when Sarah, in desperation, had told a reporter that I was hiding millions of dollars that rightfully belonged to them. She thought public pressure might force me to share the money. It backfired spectacularly. The story had become about a faithful caregiver who had been rewarded for her dedication, only to be abused by greedy family members who felt entitled to money they hadn't earned. I used the viral attention for good. I donated $2 million to 3 different children's charities in Eleanor's name. The local children's hospital named a wing after her. The remaining $6 million? I had put it in investments that would secure my future and fund my peaceful retirement. I bought a beautiful lake house 2 hours away from the city, far from Sarah and Marcus and their toxic drama. Justice isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's just quietly removing yourself from people who don't deserve you. Do you think I was too harsh, or did I give her what she truly deserved? I sat on the deck of my lake house right then, watching the sun set over the water. It had been 8 months since that morning in my kitchen, 8 months since I had walked away from Sarah and Marcus forever. And for the first time in my adult life, I was completely at peace. My days were my own then. I woke up when I wanted to. I drank my coffee slowly, without anyone demanding my credit card before I had even finished my first sip. I read books that had been sitting on my shelf for years because I had been too busy working 3 jobs to support ungrateful adults. The house was beautiful. 3 bedrooms, a wraparound porch, and a dock where I sat every evening to watch the sunset. Eleanor would have loved this place. Sometimes I talked to her out loud, telling her about my day, thanking her for seeing what I couldn't see about my own life. I didn't regret raising Sarah. Not for a single second. She taught me the most important lesson of my life, that love without boundaries wasn't love at all. It was self-destruction. For 28 years, I had thought being a good mother meant saying yes to everything, sacrificing everything, accepting any treatment as long as it meant keeping my daughter in my life. I was wrong. Real love sometimes means walking away. Real love means refusing to enable someone who is destroying themselves and you. Real love means setting boundaries and enforcing them, even when it breaks your heart. Some people thought I was heartless for cutting Sarah off completely. I had gotten letters, emails from strangers who had seen the news coverage. Some called me cruel for not giving her another chance. They said family should forgive anything, that blood was thicker than water. But those people hadn't lived my life. They hadn't worked themselves into the ground for decades while being treated like hired help. They hadn't given their retirement savings to people who had called them worthless. They hadn't gotten coffee thrown in their face by someone they had literally saved from death. I learned something important those past 8 months. For 62 years of my life, I belonged to everyone except myself. I belonged to David until he left. I belonged to Sarah from the moment I found her. I belonged to my employers, my responsibilities, my obligations. I had always been someone's mother, someone's employee, someone's caretaker. But I had never been just Emily. I had never belonged to myself. Now I did. And that wasn't selfish, that was survival. I volunteered at the children's hospital then, reading to kids who were too sick to go home. I took art classes at the community center. I was learning to paint landscapes, something I had always wanted to try but had never had time for. I had even joined a book club with other women my age who understood what it meant to finally put yourself first. I slept peacefully then. No phone calls demanding money. No guilt trips about being selfish. No one treated my home like a bank they could raid whenever they wanted. The greatest gift you could give someone was teaching them they couldn't take you for granted. even if that someone called you mom. If this story taught you anything about setting boundaries with toxic family members, hit that subscribe button right now, because you deserve to hear more stories about people who chose themselves over dysfunction.